All right, so I had one of these moments where I walked in the house and I was like, am I gonna film? Am I not gonna film? Am I gonna film? I'm like, I was like, stop being lazy because your makeup is already together. It's cute. You got a cute little outfit on. You know, it's not like you got to get ready to film. And I was like, I could talk about these palettes and stop being lazy. And then when I sat down, I was like, oh, let me adjust the color lighting because when I sat my little high yellow butt down, because you know, you never really know what color I'm going to be. I have a lot of yellow in my undertone. I had to change the lighting, like the warm on the camera, because I was like, interesting. When I look at it without me in the picture, just, you know, the background, it's fine. I move in and everything's yellow. So I hope the lighting looks pretty good. I think it looks good. So I'll talk about my eye look and everything in a second, but let's go ahead and jump into this video. Hey guys, this is Ashley. Welcome on back to my channel. So as I mentioned, I am going to talk about the palettes, or I might not even mention it. I am going to talk about the last palettes I actually tried. So this is like my palette ranking / roundup / review or midway review, how I feel about the last few palettes that I've tried. And I basically, all of these palettes, there's definitely 3 looks on these palettes, okay? So before I get carried away, let me go and introduce myself. If you're new to this channel, welcome. And if you're oldie but goodie, welcome on back. My name is Ashley. I have a doctorate in pharmacy and I love makeup. So that's how you get Dr. Ash and her makeup, but please just call me Ash or Ashley. Now, I did not film this look. I went to my cousin's baby shower. She's here from California, but she used to live here. They just moved to California, so they had the baby shower here. Anywho, so I was like, oh, my eyeshadow is looking cute. So I actually have on this shade called Gamma Ray by Terra Moons. And then, you know, I got the little blush situation going on. And then I got my Dulce Colors lipstick. This is the shade Amberish. It's the lip liner. This is the Naima Tang collaboration. And then I actually paired it with one of the lip clays or lip clouds by Kaleidos Cosmetics, and this is the shade Terra, so it's like their terracotta shade. So this is what it looks like. I really love this formula because it's basically looks like a liquid lipstick, but it's matte, but it's real like soft on the lips. It's not trying. It's really comfortable, long wearing. I love this formula. This formula is really nice. Okay. Only problem is when you order from Kaleidos, you know, it's just going to take a minute, because it's coming from China. And then let me show you my eyeshadow real quick. So this is the shade Gamma Ray by Terra Moons. And I don't know if it's considered necessarily to be a multi-chrome, but it's definitely a lot of shiftiness, very bronzy with a little hint of green. In the inner corner, I actually popped in with my Prophecy highlighter by Kaleidos as well. This is the Space Age Prophecy highlighter. And then I just took a little dab of this and put it in the inner corner. And you know, this is a very holographic highlighter. And the mattes are actually from one of the palettes I'm about to talk about. So this is the Velvet Liaison from McGrath Labs. It's the all matte situation. So went in with this shade and this shade just to kind of build my look, and I think it came out great. And then for bronzer, you know the bronzer I always use, which is basically my Mentor Cosmetics bronzer. And I went in with my Clarity Cosmetics blush, and this is an Extra Shot Please. It's a nice warm burnt orange blush, and then topped it off with my little highlighter from House Labs, and this is in Fire Opal. Oh my gosh, this shade is magical. Okay, I bought this like around Christmas time, so when they had the little extra 20% off sale. So that's what I have on my face. And no, I didn't film it, but you know, I just thought I'd mention it. And this shade is wonderful. So I also, in between using my palettes, I'm getting really chatty right here. In between my palettes and doing palette rotations, I try to say to myself, at least now I'm saying, okay, like instead of using a palette, you know, 1 to twice a week, I will pull into some of my single shadows so I can get good use out of them. So I'll be using palettes, and then I try to work in a couple of my single shadows. And I think that's a good idea because, you know, a lot of times we just have our palettes, and then our single shadows are just like stored away in these, you know, empty palette type of situations, and we don't always use them. So That's my way of using them more. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the last palettes I tried. So I have some good ones here. So normally I rank them. And as far as ranking them, you know, I'm not the first person to rank palettes. The person I saw that did any type of ranking first was always Kelsey Brianna J. And she ranked concealers and Pat McGrath palettes and all types of things. And I felt like the trend just really took off across YouTube. But I really like to do that because it kind of lets you know where I stand with an eyeshadow palette. And I always come back and let you know, like, hey, I've been using this palette off camera. This is what I think about it, you know, because when I usually do my videos, they're always first impressions. I haven't even really swatched the shades when I start applying the eyeshadows. And I just want to let you know how they perform and how I feel about them a little bit later, because sometimes I don't always like it, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel better, or, you know, just let you know the nitty gritty about them. Now, this particular situation, I don't know if I can rank them. I like them all, and I'm going to tell you my tippy top #1 palette though, but I'm just going to talk about the palettes, okay? So in no particular order at the moment, because like I said, this is like a wrap up ranking how I feel, but I am going to tell you my absolute favorite palette at the moment. We're just going to jump right in. And since I have this like right here, we're going to jump in with, this is the Velvet Liaison palette by Pat McGrath Labs. And this was part of her Love collection. And you know, after we had the whole little debacle with, you know, Star Wars Gate and the sticker on the mothership and blah, 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 blah. Even though the little Star Wars palettes, they were cute. I liked them. And I talked about them in the last palette ranking video, but then she hit us with the Love collection, and this is like right before Valentine's Day. And this collection actually felt very true to Pat McGrath, and I was excited for some of the things. Now, granted, like we've seen these colors before, but what we hadn't had from her was an all matte palette. So this is Velvet Liaison, and I feel like it's an ode to her velvet mattes. And we have 6 beautiful shades right here. Now, these 6 shades, they are new to her collection, but you know, if we look at them, we're like, okay, we've seen these shades before. I would say that this is the first time I've ever seen a matte this light, because usually when we have the lighter shades in the bigger mothership palettes, they're technically like a satin shimmer, soft brow bone highlight, inner corner highlight, although those shades are lovely across the lid also. But this is the first time I feel like we've actually seen like a true bone matte. We have some velvety mattes, and then the formula is really beautiful, really easy. I talked about how I use this today. We have a dark brown matte. We have a medium tone brown, and the medium tone browns, we haven't had way too many of those. We've definitely had a lot of plum mattes for sure, but the mattes, they build up very beautifully. They last on the eyes. They're very blendable. Everything that you would expect from Pat McGrath Labs. The packaging of this is very gorgeous as well. One thing I talked about that in the video was that, you know, in this particular palette, we don't have the lacquer, but we have this cardboard. But this particular cardboard is a high shine metallic cardboard. So actually when I'm looking, oh, excuse me. So actually when I'm looking in the monitor right here, it actually kind of does reminisce the lacquer. And like my little theory on that is maybe because of inflation and those particular materials are becoming harder to source and probably just more expensive, that she's going with the cardboard. In this palette, I don't mind because it's more of a high shine cardboard versus like in the Bridgerton palettes. When we first saw it, I was like, this is just dull black cardboard, you know, but here it gets it. And I'm fine with that because you know what? Like the palette already cost $65 for the beautiful quality eyeshadows. And I'm like, I don't want to pay any more. I'm here. This is it. I don't want to pay any more for these 6 pans. Of course, she's been having sale after sale, but this is the particular palette that I decided to pick up out of this 3 that were covered in this particular collection, and she did have some liquid eyeshadows. So I just feel like this palette is just so versatile. You can just like wear it by yourself. It's going to go across a wide variety of skin tones. Of course, you got the beautiful blendability of these shadows. You have a little something in here for everybody, and you just really set up your looks and go on about your business and not even worry about having to blend them in, work with the shadows, take extra time, effort. They're just so nice. So I really do appreciate that. I feel like you have something for kind of every type of look you're going for. If you want more brown, if you want more rosy color stone, or you just kind of want to stay more neutral. I feel like, you have that, and then adding this in, like if you're on a deeper complexion or my complexion, this is not something that we typically wear, but across the lid or in the inner corner is actually a very beautiful shade. And then you have something for people who are more fair complected. So I feel like it's well-rounded, great 6 shades. I would love to see like another 6 pan of mattes also, but in different ranges, you know, maybe more colorful mattes, because I really do enjoy the colorful mattes out of Celestial Nirvana. So I feel like this was a super solid release. I've been actually reaching for this quite a bit. So I am very happy with this. Now, I did mention that I have the liquid shadow. So here is the liquid shadow. Liquid shadows, new to the game as far as McGrath Labs, and I decided to pick out the shade. This is called Twilight Platinum. I feel like it's a really beautiful shade. It stays on the eyes beautifully. So of course I tested it out in the video, but then I went out. I had a friend that had a birthday party, and I actually wore it to the birthday party. So I'm gonna insert a photo here, and I'm definitely gonna remember because like this was after wearing the particular shadow for like 6 hours, and I might have been a tiny bit tipsy in the photo, just a tiny. The girl wasn't drunk or tipsy, just a tiny bit tipsy, and definitely tired, okay? Just tired, okay? Because I had work that day, and I came home, and it was like one of those things where like you go to work, you don't even have time to like sit down and chill. You just gotta like get in the shower and get ready. So it was one of those situations, and so I was definitely tired when I took the photo, but what I realized is like the shadow just hung on so well. It was really beautiful. My eyelids still look opulent. They still look great. It wasn't any crumbly type of matter with the shadow. It held up. It did not crease. And I just let you know, I did prime my eyelids as usual. I didn't use any glitter glue, but I used my MAC Contemplative State. This is my new eyeshadow primer that I'm using as of yet. If you haven't been here in a while, I had to kick my holy grail of Urban Decay Primer Potion to the curb because the caffeine shade, like hasn't been available on the website in forever. And the last time I had purchased it, I purchased 2 tubes because I think they had a sale. But I have been checking and checking and checking before the end of the year because I actually kicked it to the curb around Thanksgiving or in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I haven't been able to find it. So I was just like, well, I got to have a new primer. So this is Contemplative State, and it's actually directly in the color of my skin tone, which is great. And as you can see, I've been using it, and I just scoop it out with a spatula and then blend it out with a brush. But the liquid shadow held up great, and I feel like I'm happy with the one shade I got. I don't need too many more shades, you know, because I feel like some of the shades that she did have, they are definitely very much representative of shades that she has in existing shadows, which is fun because some people just want to stick to the liquid shadows. They are very easy to work with. They don't dry down too quickly. You are able to like kind of pat them out, put them in the shape that you want to put the shadow in. So I do appreciate that. So very happy with this product right here. And the price point, I think it was like $32. It wasn't bad at all. So I appreciate it. Now, next up, we're going to talk about the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Laura palette. So if you have been here before, you know I love me some Blends Bunny. I am hooked in. It's like hook, line, and sink, okay, when it comes to Blends Bunny. And I love their matte formulation. Like if you ask me my favorite matte formulations, I would say Blends Bunny, Pat McGrath, Natasha Denona, and Viseart. I'm good. I'm there. That's it. So this is the Laura palette, and this palette was actually gifted to me, but of course all of my thoughts are going to be my own, and I've basically just developed a relationship with the brand because I bought the palettes. You know, I bought the palettes in the beginning. I started off with the Blends palette, the OG, and then I bought the Surge palette. Surge palette, I really fell in love, and when she came out with the Dollhouse palette, she sent it to me. And then with the All Done Up release, I bought that palette, but she ended up sending me all of the lip products. So I only bought like 2 of the lip products. And she sent me like their gel liner. And then this particular palette, I just looked in my email and I was like, oh, she's sending this to me. So thank you, Maggie, because I was definitely planning on purchasing this. So I get very excited, and you know, this is a very beautiful color story. It's very colorful, of course. So this particular palette is a little bit smaller, in terms of how she has designed the palettes. Usually sometimes we have like 5 rolls. It's not as small as the last palette release with the all done up, but we have some very beautiful shades. And I just love how she can curate a palette where it stays very true to the brand, but it doesn't feel redundant. So of course we have more tropical shades here. We have really pretty purples, blues, and we actually don't have any blues. Pretty much. We only have like a couple blues in the blends palette, but everything else has been more of a blue-green, murky type of situation. And as far as in the other palettes, I love how you kind of get like a transition color story. You get something neutral here. And then the shimmers have, like, she has just perfected her shimmer formula so much. It has definitely grown. Like this shimmer right here is like a little silent, like a little multi-chrome type of special shade right here. Very beautiful with like this mauve and the brown and the black in the palette. And she definitely puts blacks in her palette because a lot of her palettes are like kind of like artistry palettes, I would say. Definitely where the girls are definitely going in with 10-15 shades, doing the double creases. You know, I'm not doing that, but I really do love the blend and of these mattes. Like if you want colorful mattes to just add to your collection that don't cost a whole lot of money, I would definitely go with Blends Bunny. I feel like this palette is really pretty. I never have any trouble. I have used this outside of the videos. I definitely wore this look to work because I filmed this look and then I was like, oh man, it was so pretty when I filmed this. So I definitely recreated it and wore it to work one day. I have popped in a couple times with the purple mattes. I also have a look coming up in an upcoming palette rotation, not the one that just passed, but it's an upcoming one. And it's going to be, I want to say some purple and some of these mattes mixed in with the Arrow palette, okay? So I just love this palette. I think it's very beautiful. I love the color progression of it. Even though some of the mattes, they feel like a little tightly, they look like they're tightly packed, but they're not too tightly packed, so you can pick them up very easily and blend them out on your eyes. I feel like one of my, probably the least favorite shade I would say would probably be like Sailor's Delight, but everything else just kind of like blends out very easily in this palette, and I really have been enjoying it. But this is not always a color story that I would typically grab for, so I wouldn't necessarily say this is my favorite Blends Bunny palette, but I really do like it, and it does give like some bright, you know, looks, kind of more colorful. That, because I mean it's mermaid. I mean, so it's like, but I feel like it's a fun addition of mattes to my collection that I don't already have. Yeah, that's how. Okay, so next up, let's talk about this baby. And at the moment, we're only going to talk about this particular palette only, okay? We're not going to talk about all the other madness. We'll talk about that in a second. So this is the La Cienega palette by Adept Cosmetics. It was actually featured in their mystery box. If you haven't been underneath a rock, you all know what happened with that. But the palette alone, this particular palette I do really like. The palette is really nice. And, you know, they actually took a risk and updated their palette format and went in with, you know, 2 rolls of mattes and gave us 1 roll of shimmer. So usually Adept Cosmetics is very heavy on the shimmers, and we usually have about 8 shimmers. Sometimes we have 4 mattes. A lot of times we just have 2 mattes. And, you know, so I like the format. And at first I was like, I wonder how these mattes are going to be. But I found like the mattes were very easy to blend out, very easy to work with. And they apply very well. You have something for everybody. I feel like this palette is transitions very much so from day to night. Like, oh my gosh, this red did not come to play. Like even on my complexion and even on darker skin complexions, like it's going to show up as red. It's not like some little murky, weird type of brown, possibly red. No, did not come to play. This rose shade, very pigmented. They have done some work when it comes to their mattes, because I remember in the Minka palette, like I liked the mattes initially, but then when I went back to use it just on my own, I was like, and then I pulled into my Blends Bunny palette. So, but the browns, I feel like you have enough browns where it's not like, oh my God, but you have like rosier browns. You have more brown browns, and then you have like mid-tone browns, and then you have the shades for the people who are more fair complected. So everybody has a transition in this palette. So I like that, because multiple skin complexions could get a lot of use out of it. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I only got, I mean, because even like this is a lighter shade. I would say that I haven't really dipped into Inglewood, Wilshire, or Del Air. But I could definitely see myself blending out this red shade with Del Air. I have used this palette quite a few times. I've actually mixed it with the Aero palette to get a little bit more neutral looking look. And then if you take the shimmers, these shimmers are a little bit thicker, but there are actually several different textures in this particular palette. So my favorite shimmer formula is represented right here in Manhattan Beach. And it's that silky multi-chrome formula. Like if you were to swatch it, it just goes on for days and days and days, and it's just going to go all the way down your arm. And it's so reflective. It's really beautiful. It's a nice take on kind of like yellow gold, but not really yellow gold, because I'm not so much of a yellow gold person. I'm more of a bronzy gold person. So like even this shadow is like perfect for me because it has like a little bit of the green reflex and orange. Same here, you're getting yellow gold, but not just a straight on yellow gold, which because sometimes I feel it just looks a little stark on me. I just don't prefer it, you know what I mean? The blue, I feel like the blue is the only shade that I don't really get down with. And I like blues like this, but I don't know, it's something about it. I don't feel like the texture of it I like as much. That's Hermosa Beach. It's, I don't know, just can't put my finger on it. I just don't really care for it. Now, Redondo Beach and PCH, they do pretty much look alike. Now these, and I will kind of include in Santa Monica Boulevard, these are pretty much a little bit thicker in formula. And I don't feel like they're as thick as the shades in the Minka palette, but they're not as thick. They're a little bit more texture, but they're still smooth. And they still apply really easily, but they're definitely not as thick and as sticky as the shades in the Minka palette. So I do enjoy these shades. And like I said, Manhattan Beach is my favorite. And then, after that, I really love well, actually, okay, this is my favorite formula, but I would say this is my favorite shade in the palette for shimmers, because this is gorgeous. Like it's rosy, it pairs with these mattes so well, and you can just get a stunning bronzy brown look that is very interesting and captivative to the eye, where it's not like, oh, it's just another neutral look. And like I said, I didn't have any problem blending out these shadows. I was a little bit worried because, you know, sometimes like the mattes can be hit or miss. I know they've spent a lot of time updating their mattes, but you know, in the palette where you're like, you know, used to a brand being so like shimmer heavy, and now they're switching it up with the mattes. It's like, how is this going to work? You know, but it worked out well in this particular palette. And I also like the packaging. I like how we just went with like the matte black and the name embossed on here. It's just very sleek. I like it. Now, as far as the liners and all of that stuff, I told you I only kept 3 of the liners. The liners did work well because I felt like I should try them. So I did try it in the video because, yeah, but if you talk about like the price with the liners and the palette, I do feel like I got moment. Like, you know, I expected 9 different products and instead I got 2 products in 7, and 8 of them were the same, just different shades. And I wouldn't have done that, but I'm not going to like beat a dead horse. I've said that already. Now, jump in to the Inspired palette. So this is the Inspired palette, and this was inspired by the show Arrow, and this is by Adept Cosmetics also. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous palette, but it's not for you if you don't like green. But it is green, baby. And this is just green goodness. It is really gorgeous. And even though it's green, I feel like you definitely get different type of green looks out of it. So it's so funny because everybody, I feel like I've just seen so many people, at least 4 or 5 people on my timeline do this little grungy green look where they use this shade, and maybe just basically it. And they have like this grungy green look. I did it. And I was like, I walked in the bathroom at work and I was like, this is lime green. Like, this is not my intent. But I do like this shade. But I was just like, oh, everybody else, it's grungy goodness. On me, I'm like, this is lime green. So like, okay. But I do like the shade a lot. One of my favorite shades is actually this shade right here, where it's called Daniel Brickwell. Now, I do have, like, I had somebody write on my comments of this particular video, and it was like, I don't get the hype when it comes to Adept cosmetics. I don't see what people like in them. And I'm like, the shimmer formulas are very substantial. And technically, when you're putting like these type of multi-chromes in a palette, like the price point is pretty reasonable, even though Adept Cosmetics runs on the higher side. Because if you were to buy these in single, you know, they cost like $10 to $15 per shade. Easy, right? But she was saying like this shade kind of like you could see my skin underneath, and I was like, but when I went back and looked at it, I was like, I can see what she means, but I felt like it was just more of the shift, because this one actually has more of a brown shift in the palette. So I just changed my battery, because I was really sitting there like, how long can I keep going without this battery die on me? And it started blinking red. And I was like, yeah, let me just get up and change it. But what I was saying about this palette, I feel like you get some very unique greens. Of course, like if I was to really scour my collection, do I have greens probably that are very dupable to this? Of course. But the only shade that I feel like that is super dupable in my collection would be this shade right here, which is Jason Broader, because it is definitely that teal shade with like the purple flip, and we've seen it. But I feel like it's necessary in this palette because it kind of gives light to the other shades in this palette, where like it kind of shifts the look. You can put it to like deep in the inner corner where you don't always have to use this, and it just gives extra dimension to the other shades around that you pair it with. Same thing with this blue shade. The blue shade is stunning. Put it with this, oh my gosh. Like this shade, oh my. It is very beautiful. You definitely have like that pink and you have that green flip, but it has like an orange in it too. And then you put the blue next to it. Oh man, it is gorgeous. The only shade that I'm like, in this palette as far as shimmer wise, I'm like, this one, it was flaky. Didn't really care for it. It feels dry. No. And then you have these two blues, and this blue is really pretty, definitely pretty all over the lids, definitely pretty if you're going to pop it in as an inner corner, light enough. And then you have like one row of mattes, so a little bit different step out for Adept also, because they're usually, like I said, you get like 2 mattes, you get 4 mattes. 4 mattes I've only actually seen really with Heather Austin's palette, but usually it's just 2 mattes, okay? So the only one that I did not really care for, this one, I don't know. I was just not feeling this little Kelly green one. But I think this is a fabulous palette. I'm really happy that I was able to pick this up. I know this one is supposed to be limited edition. I know sometimes she does bring back her limited edition things, but I know like she's definitely made a comment because like the House of L palette, that palette became so popular. A lot of people didn't get a chance to pick it up. And then the shimmer formula was just off the chain in that particular palette. And everybody's just like, yes, I need to try the shimmer formula. And then you got people on Mercari selling it for $300. Like, what? Get out of here. The palette was like $40 something. $300? You gonna really price gouge like that over a cosmetic item? Because people can't get it anymore. So I know that's why she brought back certain things so people could have a chance. And it satisfies her fans. Of course, you feel like you have something limited edition. You feel like it's a ploy because, oh, like, you know, I buy it and you just keep releasing it. But, you know, sometimes you just gotta make your base happy. You know, it's other people that want to buy it. There's other people that didn't have the money to afford it when it releases. Other people that might have just had some life events. You know, Adept sells out fast. Maybe the fingers weren't working enough. The internet wasn't strong enough. The cellular connection wasn't working in their favor to get the palette. It's all types of barriers, okay? Because I have missed out. When I first tried to buy from Adept, I was like, oh, okay. That sold out in 1 minute flat. So it is what it is. Now, the next palette, oh, this is so good. But unfortunately, this palette, I have not had a chance to wear again because it's not really, I mean, I was at Niecy W Beauty. I saw her do like a more wearable look and I was like, I thought about that look. But, you know, I haven't had a chance to rock her again. And she's bomb, okay? So this is the Chucky palette. This is Chucky times GlamLite. This is like, yes, I had to have this. I tried this. I actually said no in the beginning. I was like, no, I'm not buying it, okay? And then I was like, And then GlamLite you know, they've really been killing it with their formula lately. And then like the packaging and the affordability of the palette, because the palette was only $32. You can use anybody's like basically influencer code, and the palette sold out pretty quickly. The shipping was very timely. Look at the, what is it, lenticular flow packaging. And for some reason, I don't know how this has still survived, because usually after I film a video, I'm like throwing these away, except for the Pat McGrath unicartons, okay? But palette's still been in the unicarton, and I just feel like they did a really fabulous job on this. I'll definitely get more use out of this in the fall for sure, or just like night out in the towns when I want smoky eyes. But you get so many different variations. Like, of course, when we think about the palette, we're like, okay, what is it? The Waiting Room, basically by Melt Cosmetics, which is a great palette too. But I mean, if we're honest, like, you get more looks out of this palette. This palette is more affordable. And then somebody asked me which formula do I prefer. Do I prefer the Melt formula or the GlamLite formula? I prefer the GlamLite formula. And that says a lot, because it's more cost efficient, okay? So you got the grays, and you know how I feel about a gray matte. The gray matte is like my friend that I don't really get to see a lot, but as soon as we see each other, it's like we never missed a beat. That's how I feel about gray mattes, okay? And then we got the plums and the burgundies, and then we have these beautiful foiled shimmers. So I feel like I saw DCW Beauty probably do like this shade and this shade, and you can do like a warm red look with it, and a couple other more toned down everyday looks. But I was like, I haven't been anywhere else where I could wear this palette, and I thought about wearing, I was supposed to go to an event, but then that's when like my whole flare up happened with my lupus and stuff, and so I didn't go out with my cousins. I just sat in the bed and rested as I should, so I can feel better. And that's why I also, like, it hasn't been a couple of videos in the past couple of weeks. I had some older content that I had already basically edited and needed to get up, but other videos were taking precedence over it. But neither here or there. I just feel like this is such a gorgeous palette. I can't wait to play with it more. I definitely wanted to talk about it, even though I hadn't had a chance to wear it more, because, you know, if it's still around, I know they had a pre-order for this, or if they bring it back and you were thinking about ordering it, I feel like you should just go ahead and grab it. End story. Just grab it. Just grab it, because it's been great so far, okay? Now, my favorite palette, I can't seem to put it down. I'm like, oh, yes, let me wear this palette today. Yes, let me wear this palette today. Yes, ooh, ooh, ooh. And this thing is so freaking gorgeous. Now, I didn't know, but I guess they used to just be singles. And then when I saw them, when they put this in basically the synopsis of the palette on Instagram, and then my friend Jamila says she has the singles, but she went ahead and bought the palette. Like, they have updated, in her words, they have definitely updated the formula of this palette versus the single version. I know they added in a couple of new shades. This is just stunningly gorgeous. This is my favorite palette right now. My favorite palette right now. I love this, okay? The mattes are matty, the shimmers are shimmy, and the great thing about these shimmers, these are just good old, like, solid shimmers, foiled shimmers. So these are not multi-chromes. You do have some multi-chrome shift in it, but you're not going to have like that silkiness because of all the mica in there, and it's just like floating in. But the swatches were unreal when I did these swatches, okay? They were so beautiful, bold, vibrant, shiny. This shade, oh my God, I wore it to work last week, and this customer, he is the meanest man ever. Just mean for no reason. You be trying to tell him something like, okay, I got you. He's like, but I'm like, well, dang, are you gonna let me tell you? Have a nice day at least or something? Like, he is just, every time. He was like, oh. And he's in the drive-thru looking at me through the store, because, you know, I'm a retail pharmacist, as I usually say in the beginning. He's like, your eyes. And I don't know if I meant it to be that bold, but it was literally like this shade. I blended it out really well so it wouldn't be so dark. And this shade doesn't come off that. It's deep, but it's not like, oh my gosh, like, you know. And I put the blue in the inner corner because I forgot even what I was wearing. in this pink, baby. And then I think I threw this, a little tiny of this in the inner corner. Honey. Now I'm always rushing, so I never get a chance to like take all the little whole photo shoot type of situation when I'm on the way to work. The best you get from me is a palette rotation if it shows up. I think this might be in a palette rotation. Actually, that's going to come up too, along with what I was telling you about whatever palette. Oh, the lower palette with the arrow palette. And I did a different look with it. But I love this palette. This shade, Devotion, is a new shade. It's so sparkly. It's so pretty. So first of all, like this shade, I don't know, it hits the nostalgia for me. Because back in the day, like, oh my gosh, with like my MAC pigments, hold on a second. So like that shadow, that pink shadow, it is just so reminiscent to me of like back when I first started wearing makeup, or like back in in my college days. And this shade Fuchsia right here by MAC. This is a MAC pigment. You see, it's old school. It's not even the little skinny jars. It's the fat jars, baby. Look, couldn't get rid of this if you tried, okay? I know I have been chatting a lot during this video, but whatever. Stick with me. So back in the day, you know, these used to be like $18, $20 per jar, right? And so, you know, high school, college, definitely in college. So what we would do, we were like, okay, so do you want to go half in with a pigment? And I'm like, yeah. And we want this color. And then we would go to Michael's and we would get us a little container and we would pour half of it in there because you never run out. Like I literally, my first pigment that I bought when I was in high school, y'all, in my senior year of high school, back in 2001, because I graduated in high school in 2002, like I still have that pigment. My roommate in college in freshman year, she knocked it across the dresser by accident. We scooped up and salvaged whatever was left. I still have plenty of it. I have given these things away. Like I have tapped them in the little Michael jars for like my grandmother, for my friends. Like even if we weren't even going in half on them, because like in college, we was like, look, $9 is better than that 18, you know what I mean? So literally can't get, so it just brings back so much nostalgia. And this shade is still banging to this day. And it's called Fuchsia. Like literally. So it just, oh shoot, here I go swatching stuff. So like, and it doesn't seem like, oh, it's that, but look. Back in the day, this is what we had for color, okay? So it kind of brought me that nostalgia. And I mean, the opulence of that shade is just so great when we're talking about Soulstone. So, and then the color story of this whole palette, you got blues, and you got purples, and you got the chartreuses, and you got a little pop of teal and the grungy green. I mean, do you see this? Do you see? You don't need no glitter glue. You don't need, baby, honey, gorgeous. Look at my finger. Like, they said this is permanent. You need to get it. Do you see this green? Honey, I'm trying to tell y'all. I'm trying to tell you, okay? You don't get any palette that I'm talking about in this video. You need to get the Moonfall by Shroud Cosmetics. They said it's permanent. It's like $30-something. It's worth it. Banging 9-pad palette. Yes. So that is my favorite palette at the moment as I sit here and wipe my fingers. Like, oh my gosh. I have not been that excited about like a fuchsia shade and I don't know the day. Because that, I mean, the light and the shine on that shade is just something special. And I appreciate, because it's not all the time, like now we just get so wrapped up in having like these multi-chromes and we get wrapped up in having like all these shifts that we forget about shadows like this, like this. Now this one I think does have a little multi-chrome shift in this. And so even when we had like the Betty Jean palette, somebody was like, yeah, these are really good. But I was like, they're just straight up foil shadows. And she was like, you know what, you're right. Like we get so far away from that. We're into stuff like this. Now, granted, this is gorgeous, like the Terra Moons, and even this is a little bit more of a standard shadow for them, but this is super solid. Super solid. All right, so I have chatted enough because this thing say 14 minutes. Before I've had to change the battery, it said 25 minutes. I hope you enjoy these palettes that I talked about right here. I definitely wanted to come in and talk about them because I was like, ooh, it's quite a bit. And then I still have coming up the Perfect World collection. I have 2 of those palettes. I got, let's see, this Clarity palette called Safari Rain right here. And I did order the bridal palette. Clarity's been coming from my neck lately. So this is the Safari. I haven't even had a chance to play with it, touch it, do anything with it. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you got any of these palettes. Let me know how you feel about it. Oh, and I do want to say, if you're wondering about the liners for I told you I was like, I'll be giving away to something. So like I said, my cousin had her baby shower today and she is a bomb makeup artist. So I gave her the other 5 multi-chrome liners. So like, I'm just keeping these 3. That's it. So they have a new home now. Happy about it. Worked out well, even though I'm still salty. Yeah. Okay, but leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you picked up any of these palettes. Are you interested in any of these palettes? Let me know. Did you have trouble with any of them? What you think about them? Give this video a big old thumbs up. Hit the notification bell so you know when I come back with another video, which will be soon. And subscribe to my channel because you know I would love to have you here in my little makeup family. And with all of that being said, you already know what time it is. It's time for the Cheddies. Hey, 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 Cheddies. Cheddies. Hey, 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 Cheddies. Cheddies. Hey, hey, Cheddies. It's like a little remix. Hey. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all later because I'm over here just doing the most. Bye.